Hey, everybody, coming at you with the much longer version of our movie review of Disclosure Day. For those who want to hear me process my thoughts, hop on the comments, have a discussion about this. Hard to throw in, all the details in the minute long version. So we're on our way to seeing 100 movies this year. And so Disclosure Day was on my list of movies I want to see. I love Steven Spielberg in the pantheon of directors that I have collected. In my DVD collection, which is now numbering about 4,000, Steven Spielberg has his own section. He is one of our foremost storytellers that we've had over the last 50 years, right? Like I said, he one of a handful of directors 50 years ago to invent the concept of the summer blockbuster. And here he still is, still doing it, still keeping it fresh, still killing it, doing a great job. And we can count on Steven Spielberg's storytelling style. And I'm always reminded of this. If you haven't seen The Fablemans, you should watch The Fablemans. Just the love that Steven Spielberg has for movies, for those who came before him, for the techniques they used, for the practical effects that they used, combined with special effects, obviously, that you have to do when you're talking about aliens and various things. But just the techniques he used, something as old as Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, Max Sennett using train chases, and he does it, these old Hollywood tropes, John Ford westerns, and throws them in like he just invented them, like they're brand new, and he does them so fresh that they feel brand new, right? So we saw the train chase in Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. We see it in here, and it's always that edge of your seat fun to go to a Steven Spielberg movie. You know that you're going to get a great 3-act story. You know that you're going to get a good message. You know that you're going to be taken into this fantasy world of a man who doesn't see the world in the same way we do, but wants us to see the beauty of humanity and the beauty of the world. And in this movie, you see that. So the general plot of this film is first and foremost about a group of rogue U.S. agents who are trying to give the secrets of the alien files that have been kept from us since Roswell to the world. And they're going up against almost a military industrial complex type of agency led by Colin Firth, who don't think that humanity can handle it. And there's a lot of questions throughout the movie about values and faith, and can human beings handle the idea that maybe we're not alone in the universe, and what will that look like on that day? And so there's a lot about human nature, trusting human nature versus trying to just assume humans believe one way or another, that we're not capable of resilience, that we're not capable of critical analysis. And it's really interesting look at that, and especially in the relationship with faith, in terms of what will happen to the faithful on Disclosure Day. And so see it for that nature. The philosophical questions are great. So, like I said, Steven Spielberg is a great bridge between old Hollywood and new Hollywood with his style. He gives us that traditional 3-act style. His Act 1 is always, he drops us right in the middle of a conflict, right? So he doesn't have to spend a lot of time world building beforehand. What he does is he sends us into a conflict and then world builds around that. And you see that in all of the great Steven Spielberg movies, right? This world building that happens, characters being ripped out of their comfort zone and then having to kind of rebalance their lives against the new dynamics of the new dynamics of the new scenario, right? And so to do this, he always trusts super capable actors that work really well with Steven Spielberg, right? So in this case, we've got Emily Blunt, we've got Josh O'Connor, we've got Colin Firth, we've got Coleman Domingo, we've got Eve Hewson. So you've got Emily Blunt, who, for all the debates and discussions about our movie star still existence, she's definitely a movie star. And Coleman Domingo is definitely one of our premier character actors that have existed over the last 20 years. I love his work. And Colin Firth, just stalwart, right? He's a blessing. And then obviously the fresh blood of the present and the future of people like Eve Hewson and Josh O'Connor. And Steven Spielberg gets performances out of people like very few directors get performances out of people. And you can count on that when you go see this movie. Again, I don't understand the blowback for that. Like, the performances he gets out of people are so heartfelt and so real, especially Emily Blunt's character track throughout this piece from beginning to end. a weather lady with personal ambitions, but wanderlust, who has to contend with being a vessel for seeing the goodness in humanity. You know, what's not to love about that? Act two, Steven Spielberg always then becomes one of our great storytellers in this case. Like I said, he explores and the relationships and interactions of these characters. What happens when a character gets ripped from their comfort zone and they have to contend or rely on each other. And we see this again in all the great Steven Spielberg movies. You know, fish out of water stories, people being put in uncomfortable environments, and how do they adapt to those environments. And this is where I said maybe act two, in this act where he's exploring those relationships and those characters, maybe gets a little overstuffed with plot. And maybe that's where the critical kind of blowback is coming, that there feels like there's a lot going on in Act 2. There's a lot of threads of a lot of stories. They get connected in the end. They get pulled together into one story. But for a while, you're left wondering, is all of this necessary? Maybe that's where it is. But still, you know, if you've seen a Steven Spielberg movie, I remember growing up and how many times we watched E.T. I feel like E.T. has a middle section that also kind of slogs along in parts. I feel like when I watch, I'll just name a number of movies where I'm like, all right, well, this is kind of a low part. But when you really think about it, he's just building those characters and he's giving you dialogue and he's fleshing them out, which is Steven Spielberg, right? And then Act 3, he's always going to hit you with trying to straighten out the dissonance from Act 2, right? He's got those action sequences that are going to lead you to this climax. So you think about any number of Steven Spielberg action sequences and Catch Me If You Can, or again, I'll just keep going back to Indiana Jones. He's so good at it. Like, he knows how to take these old Hollywood tropes, I mentioned, like I said before, and make them fresh and use them, giving homage to the great directors of the past, the great techniques of the past, but always giving us a fresh new story to look at. In this case, there's this really fun car train chase that goes into this. There's an escape sequence from a warehouse that, again, Steven Spielberg magic, right? And so in Act 3, we get that. And he just, like I said, he tones down the dissonance and tries to bring it back together, trying to cure basically your nervous stomach with resolving the plot, resolving these character relationships, and leaving you with this really beautiful, profound message of humanity and the best of humanity. Character study, human nature, what have you. Steven Spielberg is a legendary storyteller. And if you can't get a Steven Spielberg blockbuster in those three acts, then I don't know what you're looking for. It's comfort, right? It's discomfort followed by comfort, followed by a beautiful John Williams score to send you out the door. And that has been 50 plus years of our existence, of knowing that Steven Spielberg is out there. Steven Spielberg is looking for the right project. Steven Spielberg is going to give you and scratch that itch for your summer blockbuster. Like I said, handful of directors to invent the summer blockbuster. Like I said, the actors in this film, I can't say enough about them. The way the whole thing comes together, the questions, the philosophical questions it asks. I'd say go see it. Despite what critics are saying about it, or despite the naysayers about it, I think it's beautiful. I think the whole relationship between aliens and man plays nicely into what we already saw this year. In movies, yeah, it's just a beautiful story, and it's a great Steven Spielberg vehicle. So I would definitely go see it, and you know, it's a family film, I'd say, as well, because he always tries to paint it for a wide audience. So, you know, Steven Spielberg, Disclosure Day. I say go